My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 32 years old, and last Tuesday my husband Michael died of a sudden heart attack. The moment I called my parents, my voice shaking, barely able to get the words out, my mother said, "Claire, we're in the middle of Jesse's birthday dinner. Can this wait until tomorrow?" That was the moment I shattered all over again. First, I lost my husband. Then, I lost the illusion that my family would be there for me. They didn't show up that night, or the next morning. And when they finally did come around, what they said made everything worse. But I'll get to that. Because the part that still rings in my ears was the silence after I said Michael died, and my mother, my own mother, took a beat too long to respond. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your city and local time in the comments. I read everyone. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. That morning was normal. Too normal. Michael made Sophie pancakes shaped like elephants, one of his little Saturday morning traditions, even though it was Tuesday. He kissed me goodbye, still in his favorite navy suit, and smiled. "Real syrup, Claire," he said. "Don't forget, none of that corn syrup garbage." I rolled my eyes at him. That was the last thing he ever said to me. At 10:42 a.m., my phone rang. It was Kelsey, Michael's assistant. She was crying so hard I could barely make out the words. "Claire." Michael collapsed. "Client meeting. Ambulance is here. They're taking him to Mercy General." I dropped my coffee. The mug shattered across the tile pieces everywhere. My hands shook. I called Diane, our neighbor, to pick Sophie up from school. Then I grabbed my keys and ran. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Red lights didn't exist. I drove with tunnel vision, whispering bargains into the steering wheel. "Please don't take him. Please not, Michael. Please not yet." But when I arrived, a nurse met me in the hallway, with that look I've only ever seen in movies, sympathetic, practiced, but empty. He was gone. "Time of death, 11:23 a.m., she said. I was 20 minutes too late. I walked into the room and saw him lying there. Still. Too still. His skin was still warm. His lips slightly parted, like he might wake up and complain about the hospital lighting. Kelsey stood beside me, her mascara a mess. "He said he had chest pain last week," she whispered. But he waved it off, said he was fine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him awake. But all I could do was press my forehead to his and whisper, "You weren't supposed to leave us." Then came the paperwork. The questions. Burial or cremation organ donor? Do you know what suit he'd want to be buried in? Questions I never imagined answering in my 30s. But nothing compared to the question that waited at home. How do you tell your 8-year-old daughter her father is never coming home? I picked Sophie up from school just after 3. Diane had brought her a snack and sat with her in the office, distracting her with a book while I gathered myself in the car. My hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, driving through a world that had gone on spinning when mine had completely collapsed. As soon as Sophie saw me, she frowned. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, swinging her backpack over one shoulder. "He said he'd be at my art show tonight." My stomach turned. I hadn't rehearsed what to say. How could I? I pulled the car over a block from school, somewhere quiet. My voice caught as I turned to her in the back seat. "Sweetheart, something very sad happened today. Daddy got very sick at work, and his heart stopped working." She blinked. "Can the doctors fix it?" The innocence of the question gutted me. I could barely speak. "No, honey, they couldn't fix it. Daddy died today." Her face didn't change at first. Just stillness, silence. And then the sound this terrible animal sob erupted from her chest. "No," she screamed. "I want Daddy. I want him." I reached back and pulled her into my arms, her body shaking with grief that was too big for her frame. We cried there for a long time, parked in the shadow of a tree, as the world carried on without us. That night she refused to sleep in her bed. She curled up in mine, clutching one of Michael's t-shirts, inhaling what was left of his scent. I held her close and told her stories about him, the time he tried to build a treehouse and fell out of it, the way he burned every pancake the first time he made them, the way he called her Button, because she was as cute as one. When she finally drifted off, I tiptoed into the bathroom, locked the door, and let myself break apart. Grief, when it hits hard enough, isn't poetic. It's physical. It's stomach-churning. It's punching walls and shaking until your legs give out. I needed comfort. I needed someone to tell me what to do next. So I called my parents again. This time my mother answered on the fifth ring, her voice flat. "Claire." "Mom," I whispered, "he's really gone." She sighed. "Yes, you said that earlier. We're just getting home." Jesse's dinner ran long. "I don't know what to do," I said, my voice breaking. "There's so much, Sophie. She's not okay. I'm not okay." "Well, honey, you're strong. You've always been independent," she said, as if that was a compliment. "We'll come by tomorrow, okay, after we get things settled here." Settled. Like this was an inconvenience, a scheduling conflict. And then my dad got on the phone. "Claire, did Michael keep his life insurance policy current? That's going to be important. You need to call them first thing in the morning. Not, are you safe? Not, can we come help? Just a question about money." I ended the call and stared at the bathroom wall until my vision blurred. Somewhere in the other room, Sophie whimpered in her sleep. I pressed my palms into the tile and made myself a promise. If I couldn't count on my parents now, I wouldn't count on them ever again. The next few days passed in a fog of phone calls, decisions, and logistics. I had to plan a funeral, notify Michael's colleagues, answer texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. People said the same things over and over: he was too young. "I'm so sorry. Let us know if you need anything." All of it well-meaning. All of it useless. Sophie barely spoke. She clung to me like a shadow. The night terrors started almost immediately, screams in the dark, calling for her daddy, bolting upright, with tears already streaming down her face. Every night, I told her the same story, how Michael had read to her in silly voices, how he'd pretended to be a soccer coach when he didn't know the rules, how he'd once made pancakes in the shape of a unicorn just to make her laugh. I recited memories like prayers, hoping they'd be enough to hold her together while we both unraveled. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday morning. I asked people to wear whatever made them feel close to Michael. That meant suits for some jeans and concert t-shirts for others. He would have liked that he hated pretense. His co-workers showed up in full force. The partners from his firm were somber quiet. His assistant Kelsey sobbed through the entire service. They told Sophie stories about her dad that made her smile for the first time in days. About how he'd brought donuts every Friday. About how he always remembered people's birthdays, even when their own families forgot. About how he once spent hours helping a junior associate learn to budget because she was too embarrassed to ask anyone else. Meanwhile, my parents arrived 20 minutes late. My mother was dressed like she was going to a charity gala, not her son-in-law's funeral. My father walked in like he owned the place, checking his watch as he sat down. My sister Jessie trailed behind them, visibly annoyed that her dress didn't fit right. They slid into the front row like royalty returning from vacation. After the service, they offered brief, performative hugs. "You did a good job," my mom said vaguely. My dad nodded once. The music was tasteful. Tasteful, like we just wrapped up a brunch. The real gut punch came at the reception. I caught my father near the drinks table, talking to Uncle George, one of his golf buddies. Michael was on the partner track. Between the firm's payout and the insurance, Claire's going to be just fine. Set for life, probably. Set for life. My fingers clenched around the edge of the kitchen counter. I was trying to hold myself together, trying to host people in the home I had built with my husband. A home that now felt like a museum exhibit of a life that no longer existed. They didn't help clean. They didn't check on Sophie. They didn't ask what I needed. They accepted condolences like the loss had happened to them, and not to the man who shared my bed, made our daughter pancakes, and built a life with me. Meanwhile, Michael's parents, Diane and Robert, were the ones who stepped in. Diane stayed in the kitchen, making sure food was out and drinks were replenished. Robert kept Sophie close, distracting her gently, asking if she wanted to show him her artwork. They were grieving, but they made space for mine. And when the last guest left and I turned to my own parents for one final sliver of support, my mother adjusted her shawl and said, "We'd love to stay, but we really should beat the traffic." They left, without asking if Sophie wanted them there, without asking me anything at all. 3 days later, they showed up on my porch without warning. It was around 10 in the morning. Sophie had just gone back to school for the first time since Michael's death, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with insurance paperwork spread across every surface, like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I hadn't showered. I hadn't eaten. The only thing keeping me upright was the thought that Michael had trusted me to handle this. Through the peephole, I saw my father straightening his golf shirt and my mother checking her reflection in her compact mirror. I opened the door, confused and tired. "I didn't know you were coming," I said, not moving to let them in. "We thought we'd check in," my mother said, breezing past me like she still lived here. "See how you're holding up now that the chaos has passed? Is Sophie at school good? We can talk openly." That should have been my first red flag. They settled into the living room, like guests waiting to be served. I made coffee out of habit, still caught in the reflex of being polite, of being the good daughter, even when I knew better. My father took a long sip and looked around. Michael had great taste in electronics. That sound system top-notch. He said it like we were reviewing a hotel lobby, not sitting in the home where his granddaughter cried herself to sleep every night. "Claire." He began setting his cup down on a coaster with surgical precision. "Your mother and I have been thinking about your situation." "What situation?" "Your financial one," my mother clarified, crossing her legs. "Now that you're adjusting to life without Michael." "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "What exactly are you saying?" My father leaned in like a CEO, about to make a pitch. "We're getting older. Our retirement fund took a hit last year, and with healthcare costs rising, we thought that since Michael left you and Sophie well provided for, you might be in a position to help family." "Help family?" I stared at them, dumbfounded. "Are you asking me for money?" "We're asking for support," my mother said with faux humility. "Something substantial." "We were thinking 50% of the insurance payout." I laughed. Not out of amusement, more like disbelief. "You want half of what Michael left to take care of Sophie for retirement. It's not like you won't have plenty left," my father added. "Think of it as a gesture of appreciation. We raised you, paid for your college, helped with your first home." I was stunned. Not because I didn't expect them to be selfish, they'd always found ways to make everything about them. But this was new. This was shameless. "My husband is dead," I said quietly. "Sophie lost her father. And you're sitting here with dollar signs in your eyes." My mother had the audacity to look offended. "Don't be so dramatic. We came to you respectfully." "Respectfully," I echoed, standing up. "You think this is respectful?" "Claire," my father said, his voice sharpening, "you have an obligation to family." "No," I snapped. "What I have is a daughter who needs stability. What I have is a responsibility to the man who trusted me to protect her future. You didn't show up when I needed you most. And now you want a payday." He stood suddenly stern. "We deserve respect." "Respect is earned," I shot back. "And you've earned none." They left in a huff, muttering about ungratefulness and duty. The moment the door closed, I sank to the floor, trembling not just from rage, but from a terrible realization. This wasn't over. They would try again. They didn't wait long. 3 days after that conversation, my father sent an email with a subject line that read, "Family Discussion Proposal." Attached was a PDF 6 pages long, titled Financial Equity Plan. Inside, he'd outlined their so-called reasonable request for half of the insurance payout, plus an additional 15%, earmarked for my sister Jessie to pursue her creative endeavors, since Michael's passing had opened opportunities for redistribution. Redistribution, like grief was a bank account. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email to David Klein, Michael's friend, and the lawyer who handled our estate planning, and asked if there was anything I needed to worry about legally. "There's no claim they can make," David replied. "The policy is ironclad. Everything goes to you and Sophie. They can posture, but they have no rights here." I should have been relieved. But instead, I felt like something in me was about to erupt. So when the invitation came for a family meeting at my parents' house that Sunday, I agreed to go. And I brought Sophie. "Are you sure you want to come?" I asked her that morning, brushing her hair, while she sat quietly on the bathroom counter. She nodded. "I have something I want to give them. Something important." I eyed the manila envelope in her lap. "What is it?" "You'll see," she said in that serious little voice of hers. "Daddy helped me come up with the idea once." I didn't press her. I was too busy preparing myself for whatever ambush lay ahead. When we arrived, the driveway was already full. Uncle George, Aunt Linda, even Cousin Katie were there. Clearly, my parents had called in the reinforcements. Maybe they thought a crowd would pressure me into compliance. We walked into the living room, and my father stood like a judge at the head of the coffee table, holding a clipboard. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Let's begin." He launched into a presentation as if he were in a boardroom: cost of living projections, assisted living expenses, medical insurance premiums. My mother chimed in with how they'd sacrificed so much to give me a good life. Jessie, still scrolling through her phone, sighed theatrically about how hard it was being an artist in a market that didn't value creativity. And then he slid the printed document toward me again. This is our proposed breakdown. 50% to your mother and me. 15% to Jessica. That still leaves you more than enough. I looked down at the paper but didn't touch it. You do realize Michael died less than a month ago? Exactly, my mother said. And that's why this is the right time. While everything's still fresh and actionable, my blood turned cold. I can't believe you, I said. You didn't bring food when he died. You didn't help with the funeral. You haven't even asked how Sophie is doing. You've brought nothing to our grief, but now you want to take from it. The room went silent. That's when Sophie stood. She walked to the middle of the room and held out her envelope. I made this for you, she said, handing it to my father. It's what you earned. He opened it, confused. Inside was a crayon-colored invoice on notebook paper. At the top, bill for being real family. Below, in careful handwriting, hugging mommy when she cried, $0 not provided. Helping me sleep at night, $0 not provided. Caring about daddy's funeral, $0 not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless but not earned. Total due $0. The paper trembled in his hands. You came here for money, she said, her voice tiny but clear. But we're not giving it to you. You didn't earn it. I couldn't speak. My throat was raw with emotion. And as I took Sophie's hand, I looked around the room and said the only thing that needed saying. We're done here. We walked out without a backward glance. My heart pounded not from fear, but from something else. Something sharper, cleaner, clarity. That night, I blocked their numbers. Every one of them, my parents, Jessie, even a couple of aunts who had started texting guilt-laced messages about family unity and healing through compromise. I needed space, and more than that, I needed silence. David assured me again that there was nothing they could do legally. They'd have to prove fraud or undue influence, and frankly, clear the documents Michael left are airtight. He even wrote a personal letter that explicitly states his intentions. He was right. I hadn't opened it until then, hadn't been ready. But now, sitting on my bed after Sophie fell asleep, I unfolded the note Michael had written me 3 months before he died. His handwriting, steady and unhurried, filled the page. Claire, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I didn't want to scare you by telling you how concerned my doctor was about my heart. I brushed it off because I believed we still had time. I hope I was wrong and you never need this letter. But if I'm gone, I want you to know Sophie's future is secured. Everything goes to you. Her education, her security, your peace of mind. Please don't let anyone guilt you into giving away what we built. My parents love you. Marcus will help. Your parents. I don't trust them with this. Protect what matters. You are stronger than you know, Mo. I held the letter to my chest and cried not the messy, uncontrollable sobs of the first few days, but something deeper. Something cleaner. Grief, yes, but laced with resolve. I called Marcus the next morning. He was in Tokyo, but I didn't even get past. They asked for half the insurance before he cut in. I'm booking a flight. I'll stay for the summer longer if needed. I promised Michael I'd look out for you and Sophie. I intend to keep that promise. It was the first time since Michael died that I felt held. Not coddled, not pitied, just seen. Like someone finally understood the weight I'd been carrying and wasn't going to add more to it. Meanwhile, Sophie began asking harder questions. Mom, she said one night as I tucked her in, why did Grandpa ask for Daddy's money? I paused. Did someone tell you that? I heard him, at the funeral. He said we'd be rich now. I closed my eyes. The bile rose in my throat again. Well, I said carefully, some people see money when they should see people. Your daddy wanted to take care of us, not them. Will they try again? They already did. But we said no, and we'll keep saying no. She nodded, clutching her stuffed polar bear. Good. Because Daddy said family is who shows up when it's hard. And they didn't. Every day since the funeral, she'd drawn something for Michael. Pictures of him flying in the clouds, riding comets, or sitting in the bleachers at her future soccer games. She taped them to her wall like constellations. Her grief came in waves, sometimes silent, sometimes explosive, but she was learning to ride them one drawing at a time. And me, I was learning something too. Grief doesn't just reveal loss, it reveals people. Who steps in, who disappears, and who tries to take what doesn't belong to them. I had lost Michael, but I hadn't lost my voice. And I wasn't about to let my daughter grow up believing silence was love. Word spreads fast in families, especially when money's involved. After the confrontation, a strange ripple moved through the extended branches of the Donovan tree. Some relatives went quiet, others chose sides, and a few unexpectedly stepped forward. Aunt Linda, my dad's sister, called me from a number I didn't recognize. "Claire," she said gently, "I want you to know I was at that meeting because they told me it was about setting up a scholarship in Michael's name." I didn't know what they were planning. There was something raw in her voice. Regret, maybe, or shame. "They've always favored Jesse," she continued. "We all saw it, but no one said anything. Maybe we should have." I thanked her not because it fixed anything, but because truth feels like water when you've been walking through fire. A few days later, I got a message on Instagram from my cousin Katie, Jesse's daughter. 22, just out of college, never one to stir the pot. "I've always seen how they treated you differently," she wrote. "What they did after Michael died was disgusting. I want you to know I'm not okay with it." Her message hit harder than I expected. Not because I needed her approval, but because it meant the next generation wasn't blind to the patterns we'd all been trained to ignore. And then Marcus arrived. He showed up on a rainy Thursday evening, fresh off a red-eye from Japan, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a worn-out smile. Sophie tackled him the moment he walked in. "Uncle Marcus, you came early." "Of course I did," he said, scooping her up. "You think I'd let you girls handle all this drama without backup?" He moved into the guest room without ceremony. We didn't talk much that first night, just sat on the couch, wrapped in separate blankets, sipping chamomile tea while Sophie slept. He looked at me eventually. "You're doing better than I expected." "I'm holding together with paper clips and coffee," I admitted. "Well, then Michael would be proud," he said. "That's exactly how he got through grad school." In the days that followed, Marcus became part of our rhythm. He picked Sophie up from school, helped her with math homework, took her to the zoo on weekends, taught her how to make her father's favorite chili recipe step by step. And I began to see Michael again, not in a ghostly way, but in gestures. The way Marcus rubbed his neck when he was thinking. The way he always overcooked eggs. The way he listened, really listened, when Sophie talked about her dreams or nightmares. He never tried to replace his brother. He just made space for Michael's memory to keep living. Meanwhile, my parents grew more desperate. After several blocked calls and one unwanted bouquet, with a card that read, "Let's be adults about this," they tried to go around me. My father showed up at Sophie's school during dismissal. The office called me, immediately blessed them. Principal Ramirez met him at the front door and refused to let him past the lobby. When I arrived, she took me aside. He said he was picking up his granddaughter, but he's not on the authorized list. Should we notify the authorities if he tries again? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to protect Sophie like a mother bear with nothing left to lose. Instead, I exhaled. Just call me, every time. And no, he's not allowed to pick her up, ever. The next morning, I drafted an email. Subject: Final Boundary. Do not contact me or Sophie without permission. If you violate this again, I will escalate it legally. This is no longer up for discussion. I sent it. Then I blocked their email addresses too. Marcus read the message over my shoulder and nodded. About time. I wasn't just closing a door. I was locking it for Sophie's sake and for mine. Weeks passed. Then a month. The silence from my parents felt foreign at first, like an absence where something poisonous used to sit. But absence, it turns out, is peaceful when you've been drowning in noise. And then, out of nowhere, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just our names, Claire and Sophie Donovan, written in my mother's cursive, soft and old-fashioned. Inside was a note. We would like to see Sophie on her birthday, just for a short visit. In public with you, present the entire time. We understand if the answer is no, but we hope it isn't. Mom and Dad. Attached was a modest gift, a book on astronomy, not princess dolls, not something generic. Sophie had been talking about constellations lately. They had finally miraculously paid attention. I read the card 3 times before saying anything. That evening after dinner, I sat across from Sophie at the kitchen table while she was coloring a nebula in purple and teal. Your grandparents want to see you, I said gently. On your birthday, just for a little bit. She didn't look up. Are they still being mean about Daddy's money? No, I said. At least, not recently. They say they just want to see you. No demands, just a visit. She was quiet for a long moment, then shrugged. Maybe if it's at Rosie's ice cream, the one with the blue chairs, and only for 15 minutes. I smiled despite myself. You drive a hard bargain. She grinned. Daddy said not everyone gets second chances, but sometimes it's okay if they earn it. We met them 2 days later at Rosie's just after school. Marcus came too, standing a few paces away, keeping watch. I trusted him to read the temperature of the room before I did. They were already seated when we arrived. My mother stood first, looking older than I remembered. Her eyes softened when she saw Sophie. Hi, sweetheart, she said cautious. Happy birthday. Sophie gave a small wave. Thanks. For 15 minutes, they asked her questions. About school, about her favorite book. My dad even said he'd tried watching a science documentary about black holes so he could understand what she liked. It was stiff, but it wasn't manipulative. It was effort. When it was time to go, Sophie stood and said, "Thank you for the book. I'm still mad about the money stuff. But this was better." I stood next feeling strangely like we had just passed through customs at an emotional border crossing. My mother touched my arm. "Thank you for letting us try." I didn't say you haven't earned forgiveness. I didn't say this isn't over. I just nodded. That night, Sophie placed the astronomy book on her shelf right next to Michael's framed photo. They weren't terrible today, she said, brushing her teeth. Maybe they're trying. Maybe I said, we'll see. The phrase became our quiet agreement. We'll see. That visit didn't open the floodgates, but it started a pattern. Monthly supervised outings, boundaries clear, conversations polite, no mention of the will, the money, or the confrontation. And every time I watched for crack slips of entitlement or manipulation. But they never came, not yet. I wasn't naive enough to call it reconciliation. But I was just wise enough to recognize repair. And repair, real slow grudging repair, was something. Meanwhile, Marcus became more than just our safety net. He became our scaffolding. He accepted a teaching job at a university nearby and moved into a condo 10 minutes away. Sophie now had an uncle who showed up for every science fair, every dentist appointment, every meltdown about missing her dad. He never said Michael's name like it was a wound. He said it like it was a legacy. And he helped me build a life where Sophie could carry her grief like a compass, not a burden. The past still rang loud. But with Marcus's help, we were learning to tune it out. Michael's birthday arrived on a warm September afternoon. It would have been his 37th. Sophie wanted to do something special, not sad, she said, but about him. So we decided on a backyard gathering. Nothing fancy. Just the people who really knew him, really loved him. I grilled burgers the way he used to, charred on one side, slightly undercooked on the other. Marcus made his infamous potato salad, the one Michael teased him about every 4th of July. Diane and Robert brought photo albums, old ones from Michael's childhood, him with gap-toothed smiles, muddy soccer cleats arms, wrapped around an oversized Labrador named Moose. Sophie set up a table with her memory book, a scrapbook she'd spent weeks making. It was full of drawings, notes, ticket stubs, and funny things Michael had said. On the front, in glittery blue marker, she'd written, "Things I want to remember about my dad." People laughed. People cried. People told stories that reminded me of who Michael was, outside of just being my husband. How he helped a neighbor change a flat tire in a blizzard. How he'd anonymously paid a coworker's rent during a rough month. How he made playlists for everyone in his office for no reason other than music makes Mondays suck less. It felt different than the funeral lighter, more real. No stiff suits, no dry platitudes. Just love in its purest, most stubborn form. Notably absent were my parents. I hadn't invited them. Not because I was angry, though I still was in ways I hadn't unpacked, but because I needed a space without tension. I wanted Sophie to feel safe, wrapped in the warmth of the people who showed up when it counted. That night, after everyone left, Sophie and I sat on the grass under a sky smeared with stars. She rested her head on my shoulder, silent for a while. "Do you think Daddy saw us today?" she finally asked. I do, I whispered. And I think he was really proud. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Even about the potato salad? I laughed. Especially that. She grinned. Uncle Marcus said he almost burned it on purpose, just to keep the tradition alive. I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You know Daddy would have loved what you're becoming. Strong, smart, brave. She hesitated, then said, I think the thing I miss most is how he looked at me. Like I was the most important thing in the world. You still are, I told her, to him and to me. She nodded, then pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Can I read you something? It was a letter to Michael. She'd written it the night before, hidden it under her pillow, too shy to share it earlier. Dear Daddy, I miss you every day. I miss your pancakes and your bad jokes. I miss how you danced when no one was looking. I miss how you always knew when I was sad. I'm trying really hard to be brave. I told Grandma and Grandpa they were wrong when they tried to take your money. I told them they didn't earn us. I think you would have been proud of that. I love you forever. Love, Sophie. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just held her close as the summer crickets chirped all around us, stitching their quiet song through the air like a lullaby. That night, after I tucked her into bed, I sat alone on the porch. I thought about how much we had lost, but I also thought about what we'd kept. Michael's values, his kindness, his fierce loyalty. Those were still here. They lived in Sophie. They lived in Marcus. And I'd be damned if I let anyone touch that. It took nearly a year before I stopped flinching when an unknown number called. Before I could open my email without bracing myself. Before I could drive past my parents' neighborhood without feeling the urge to press harder on the gas. Healing didn't come in some epiphany. It came in layers, quiet moments. Watching Sophie learn to ride her bike without training wheels. Hearing her laugh during a sleepover. Sitting beside Marcus during parent-teacher night while the other adults quietly assumed he was her father. We didn't correct them. It wasn't about roles. It was about who showed up. And then, about 11 months after Michael's death, I received a handwritten letter in my mailbox. It wasn't from my mother's stationery. No expensive gold-embossed monogram, just plain paper in a plain envelope. Inside was a letter from my father. Claire, we've spent a lot of time this year talking to each other, and even more time sitting in silence. Real silence. Not the kind that waits for a reply, just the kind that listens. There's nothing we can say to undo what we did. We treated your loss like a transaction, and worse, we treated your strength like an opening. We see that now. We don't expect forgiveness. And we understand that being family doesn't guarantee relationship. If you choose to keep us out of your life, we will respect that. But if you ever want to talk, truly talk, we'll be here. Not asking, not expecting, just here. Tell Sophie we hope she's still reading about stars. Dad, I didn't respond right away, but I showed it to Marcus. And then I showed it to Sophie. She held the letter between her hands like she was weighing it. Then she asked, can we have another ice cream test? So we did. We invited them to Rosie's again. Same time, same place. No party hats, no second chances, promised just a window narrow, but real. This time they arrived early. They brought no gifts, just themselves. My mother didn't wear perfume. My father didn't talk about finances. They asked Sophie about her science project, about what music she liked, about Marcus's chili recipe. Sophie drew a line in her milkshake with her straw and said, "You're still not really grandparents. But this is closer." I laughed under my breath. They didn't push. They didn't apologize again. They didn't beg for access. That was the most important part. Weeks later, they attended the one-year memorial. Quietly, respectfully. They brought an old photo of Michael holding Sophie in the hospital when she was just born. I'd never seen it before. As people shared stories, my father didn't speak, but his hands trembled as he passed the photo to Sophie. After the gathering, my mother said something I never expected to hear. We started seeing a therapist. Together. It's helped. I didn't know if I believed her, but I didn't disbelieve her either. Sophie and I have rebuilt something not from what we had before, but from the ashes of it. It's stronger because it has edges, because it has boundaries, because it was shaped on purpose, not by obligation. Michael's money remains untouched, except for what Sophie needs. The rest sits where he left it, a quiet testament to how deeply he planned for our future. But it's his values, not his accounts, that carry us now. Kindness that doesn't bend to guilt, generosity with a spine, love that says yes with its whole chest or no with clarity. Sophie once told me Daddy would want us to be kind, but not dumb. She was right. We're still healing, still stumbling some days. But every time I stand up and say no to what I used to tolerate, every time I protect Sophie's peace, before anyone else's comfort, I feel Michael with me, not as a ghost, as a guide. If you've ever felt alone in grief, especially when the people who were supposed to support you only made it worse, I want you to hear this. You are not overreacting. You are not being too sensitive. You're protecting your peace, your children, your dignity, and that matters. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family after a loss? What did it cost you and what did it give back? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this journey resonated with you, like the video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share it with someone who might need to hear it tonight. The most valuable inheritance you can pass down isn't money, it's strength.